Good evening, and welcome to Hilary Jacobs Hendel with Catherine Birndorf, Parents Have Feelings Too, a guide to navigating your emotions so you and your family can thrive. We're delighted to have you all joining us tonight at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Tim Smith, and I'm a librarian here at SNFL and your host this evening. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I would like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this possible. I would also like to remind you that if you don't already have a library card, it's easy to get one by speaking with my colleague just outside this room after the program or visiting any information desk. Finally, I would like to encourage you to visit NYPL's website and take a look at upcoming 7 Stories programs. We have an excellent lineup this season, including programs featuring new fiction and non-fiction, live music, and more. We would love to have you join us in this space again. It's now my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers. Hilary Jacobs Hendel, LCSW, is an AEDP psychotherapist, emotions educator, and author. She holds a degree from Wesleyan University, Columbia University, and Fordham University. Hilary is the author of the acclaimed book, It's Not Always Depression, which has been used worldwide to teach emotions education with a tool she adapted for public health called the Change Triangle. Hilary's writing has appeared in the New York Times, Time, Oprah, and Psychology Today. She maintains a private psychotherapy practice in New York City and was also the mental health consultant for the award-winning television show Mad Men. Catherine Birndorf, MD, is a reproductive psychiatrist and the founder, CEO, and medical director of the Motherhood Center of New York. Dr. Birndorf is the founding director of the Payne Whitney Women's Program at Weill Cornell Medicine, New York Presbyterian Hospital. In addition, she is a clinical associate professor of psychiatry. For 10 years, Dr. Birndorf was a regular mental health columnist for Self magazine and has appeared on numerous television programs, including The Today Show, Good Morning America, and CNN. Dr. Birndorf's first book, The 9 Rooms of Happiness, was a New York Times bestseller, and her most recent book, published by Simon & Schuster in 2019, is entitled What No One Tells You, A Guide to Your Emotions from Pregnancy to Motherhood. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome tonight's guests.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that welcome, and I'm so honored to be here with you, Hilary, my new friend and colleague. And so we're going to start, since the introductions have happened, but I wish you could hold up the book, but I guess everybody saw the book. There's the book, which the pub date was Tuesday. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So congratulations. Such a big deal.
Thank you.
Second book, and so many questions. Let me go with my questions that I've written down. Okay, so first and foremost, so I was just delighted when you approached me about talking about this, and I feel like my world's been kind of blown open by an interesting form of psychotherapy that I really knew nothing about, and also a way to think about parenting. You know, that's all we do all day long at the Motherhood Center, think about that transition. But I just think it should be everywhere. So I'm excited for you to tell us more about it. And I think one of the most important questions is, why did you feel this book needed to be written?
Excellent question. I just also want to thank you all for being here. Emotions education is a tough subject for many people. I always joke when I go to a party and someone asks what I do, and I say I help people and I write about emotions. They exit stage left, most of them as fast as possible. And it's really because we live in an emotion-phobic society that gives us the impression that there's nothing to know about emotions, and that all we should do is sweep them under the rug, and that there's no consequences to doing that. So the reason I felt this book needed to be written is after practicing an emotion-focused type of therapy that Catherine just said, called AEDP, after studying, or concurrently with studying to be a psychoanalyst, which is sort of the state of the art, that in CBT, I was so blown away when I, by just dumb luck, wandered 20 years ago into a conference on emotions, and it changed my entire life. I was raised by a psychiatrist in New York City, and although we were psychologically oriented, emotions were sort of just, they were just like, we talked about anxiety, but there was nothing about talking about sadness or talking about anger. And I was an anxious kid. I went through 2 clinical depressions, and it wasn't until, and went on Prozac, by the way, which really helped, went off it after 6 months, like the psychiatrist said. But it wasn't until I saw this triangle that I became so passionate about sharing with the public that my whole mind was reorganized, and I learned how to experience a feeling in my body and to move it through me so that I have not been depressed since, and my anxiety is much better. Okay, so to parent, and then I wrote the first book to help with that. When you, and maybe you could corroborate this, the people that come to see me for help, usually for symptoms like anxiety, like depression, maybe working too much or eating disorders or struggles with relationships, virtually all of them, what we end up talking about is childhood. And while 99.9% of parents love their children and want to do the absolute best for them, because they don't get an education in emotions, what they do is what was done to them, which is the emotions that are difficult for them, they cannot really tolerate in their children, or levels of intimacy and connection, or attuning and reading between the lines, or really the nonverbal behavior, which is a big part of this therapy, of just slowing down and being with another person and seeing what they need, what emotions are coming up. And so myself included, as a parent of 2 children and 2 stepchildren, I didn't know anything about emotions. And as a result, I wasn't able to really understand my own anxiety and how it manifested in my behavior towards my children. So after working with patients who themselves were parents and struggling, and who all of them had parents, we're all born to parents, it just became obvious that the way to really help people from the beginning was to give parents provide a basic emotions education so that they don't unwittingly cause unnecessary pain or suffering by either overreacting to their children's emotions, underreacting, not seeing, and that there's just really a few simple, this tool that I teach is a simple tool that's infinitely complex when you apply it in your life over your lifetime, but the basic education in and of itself is, it blows people away, because who knew?
So it sounds like you're moving into technique, but I think what you're saying so profoundly is that the best way to help your children is to be a parent, is to learn your emotions for yourself as the parent, that the parent has to understand their own emotions in order to understand their child, hopefully at any age, and be able to help them and help themselves. But first you start with yourself. I think that's what you're saying.
Well, that's what the book is all about. And that's because, and again, there's tons of science that's at the base of all of this, and we don't have time, and I'm not going to bore you with it. But connection, emotional connection with oneself, and emotional and connection with other people go hand in hand. And connection, being connected and attuned to your baby and your child and the way that you are from the earliest years on up, is not only the way that they feel safe and secure in the world, but it also directly relates to if their nervous system develops in a calm way where they can withstand emotional challenges and other challenges in life and come back to a baseline that serves them. Because what we all want to feel calm, and we all want to feel confident and really so that we can go out into the world and take all these risks, because being a human means suffering. We all suffer. That's completely normal. But how do we navigate challenges and go out and overcome them? And these are the tools, the early tools, which can be built and developed and cultivated really at any point in life. And I'm living proof of that, because I went back to social work school when I was age 39. I didn't know any of this before that, and was able to really try to work hard to undo the mistakes that I made with my children, like being controlling and overbearing and thinking that I knew best, and a whole host of other things that I've really corrected and still work on.
Yeah, remarkable. And what's also really interesting is that most parenting books are about the children, right? And this book is about the parent. And that's what I'm always looking for, particularly when I'm helping moms and birthing people transition to motherhood. You can't find books. I've got a total of one that I refer to. Now I've got yours, which I'm so excited about, because really, again, it's all about how the parent is regulating themselves, understanding themselves so that they can be the best parent.
Exactly. And some of the problems with parenting books is they tell you what to do, but you can't do it because it brings up feelings that scare you. Like if you, just the idea of like letting a child separate and go out into the world at any age can be a terrifying thing. But if we hold on to them, we're really sort of incapacitating them at some level. And so if we've done a good job as a parent, they will go out and they'll go and do scary things, and we have to not put our fears into them, and we have to not put our sadness and our anger into them when it's about us. And of course, these things all go back to our own childhoods, encoded in just how we breathe and live. And if we're not aware of what we're about and what's happening for us, we will repeat, and the children, we get wired in connection, and we get wired in our homes and upbringing, for better and for worse.
Yeah. What was your moment of like emotions? Like, oh my gosh, I don't even understand. I have emotions. What do I do with these? When did you realize, and why, that emotions mattered?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I saw the change triangle, which is something I didn't invent or develop anything new, I had a lot of really the best science education that money could buy. And I think when I saw the change triangle at an academic conference back in 2004, I was just ripe to understand. And I can quickly go into what it shows, but it's really an upside down triangle that explains that we are born with these core survival emotions that we all have, and they're there for a reason. That things happen in the environment, and they're sort of they're in between. So for example, fear is a core survival emotion. If we didn't have fear, we would be prey. It would be dangerous. So that if a lion were to burst into this very room right now, we would all head for the hills in an instant. Nobody would consciously say, oh my God, there's a scary lion in here, I could get eaten, and run, because by the time you had that thought, you'd be dead. So the whole idea of these core emotions is that they're fast-acting programs for action. And we think we have emotions in our head, but really, I'm going to get a prop now. Everybody likes these props. If this is a midsection of the brain, when our eyes and ears and sense of touch pick up something in the environment, it triggers the middle of the brain, which is not under conscious control. That was a revelation, because I thought, and I was taught, that if I was only tough enough and I had enough grit, that I could just mind over matter and muscle through and push down my emotions without, or just not have them without consequences. But what happens is when something like a lion comes in, we see it with our eyes. I mean, you might feel the wind of it coming in our back, or if someone's following you, And from the middle of the brain, it triggers the lower brain right to the biggest nerve in the body called the vagus nerve, which is attached to every single organ in the body. And the purpose of that particular core emotion program, like fear, is to ready our body for running so that we can survive danger. We have a core emotion program for anger, which is to fight if we are attacked, whether that's a personal insult or a physical insult. This is to protect ourselves. When we have a loss, whether it's the loss of our keys, or the loss of a loved one, we are going to feel sadness. And again, it's going to be on a spectrum for how big that loss is. And then the program for that tells us to go for comfort and to slow down and to grieve and to heal from this loss. So there's 7 core emotions that I talk about on the change triangle.
Can you just name them? You've said
fear, anger, sadness, disgust, joy, excitement, and sexual excitement, which I actually left out of this book because people have mixed feelings about sexuality, and I didn't want to give anyone a reason not to read the book.
Yeah.
So
fair.
Oh yeah. So so when having been anxious my whole life, and predominantly while I had a great mother, we didn't do sadness in my family. And when somebody died or somebody was sick in the hospital, my anxiety skyrocketed, and I didn't know why, and I just thought that was normal. And when I saw that change triangle that tells you when you bury a core emotion because your mother doesn't like it, and we're always trying to please our family from the get-go, because it's for survival, it's much more important to keep our parents close by being pleasing. So if my mom doesn't like sadness and I pick up these nonverbal facial expressions and body postures, which is how we're all really relating all the time. And if you don't believe that, just have somebody tell you they love you with a scowl on their face and a terrible tone. You're not going to believe it. You're not going to feel that love. So when I saw the change triangle that told me that when sadness gets blocked, we will feel anxious, it was a revelation. And I didn't even need therapy for that right there and then. I learned from Diana Foch's work, who did ADP, and what I teach in the book, what sadness feels like, how to move through it, and I was, voila, able to process sadness, go to funerals, go to the hospital, and feel sad instead of anxious.
That's really, really interesting. And I'm going to
Not everybody has that experience. I was ripe for it because of all my, I think the education and going to dental school in the first 2 years or with the medical students, that I understood the physiology. It just clicked.
For you. But maybe, again, so that all makes sense, and it's still a little bit theoretical,
Right.
but maybe you can say, and maybe this is self-evident, but what does it mean to be with your emotions, or to allow, to have that emotion and to let it exist?
Okay.
What does that look like?
Okay. So, and I'll give you a parenting example.
Okay, please.
Up until this week, my oldest daughter had a baby, 8 days old, and all I want to do is hold that baby. But apparently other people, like my son-in-law's mother and my ex-husband's mother, and like there's people that want to visit them. So my daughter said to me, it won't be so great to come this weekend. So my first inclination, which were my old habits, was to kind of like a little really, that's a bummer, and maybe use a little guilt to get her to change her mind, which I think, so I've been told by my kids, I would ask the same question over again to get the answer that I wanted. This time, I know my first inclination, it should always be whatever feeling I'm having, an impulse to not act on it, to zip it. And then I visualize this change triangle, the upside down triangle that's got the core emotions, the anxiety on the top right, and then on the top left, the way we avoid emotions. And I knew right away, so how do I really feel that I cannot, if I accept my child as she requests and as she is, what do I feel? It's a loss. And I have to let myself be sad, and I, give myself a little hug inside, or I ask John, my husband over there, I need a hug. and then what that does, which I talk about in the book, is the idea of playing the long game with our children. So I could have tried to get my way in the moment, but at what cost? And when I behave when I listen to my kids and attune to their needs, things go a lot better and our connection is a lot stronger.
What do you do with the pain?
Yeah. So with sadness, if we stay with that, the way that I teach someone to, so the idea is you have to experience an emotion in the body. The bummer news is we can't think our way through feelings, and Lord knows I tried for the first 40 years of my life. So the way that I teach in both books how you experience an emotion is one, and this you may be able to do right away, and it may take practice, because the change triangle is a like mindfulness with a map tool that you practice your whole life, and gets easier, and you come back to the bottom of the triangle, right under these core emotions. I should say that when we experience a core emotion, and they're generally wave-like, and they generally don't last too long in their pure form, like really 1 or 2 minutes if I'm practicing therapy and I'm helping somebody feel something, we return to that baseline regulated self, which is called in the book the open-hearted state of the authentic self, right? We're trying to be open-hearted parents. And the way you know you're there is that you feel calmer, you feel more connected to yourself, you feel more connected to your children, you feel more compassionate, and you have the capacity to be curious. And there's other C words that Richard Schwartz talks about in internal family systems therapy, but those are the ones for parenting that are important. So the way that I would experience my sadness is, one, to pause and turn inward, and to be able to first name it. So I have to be able to say, I am sad, right? That was sad for me that I can't visit my grandchild this weekend. And then I would be able to turn to it in the body and basically, like, how do I know I'm sad? Well, I feel like a heaviness in my chest. Like for this particular thing, I didn't want to cry, but other people, if there's a loss, you may feel pressure behind your eyes that's telling you need to have a good cry. Now, all core emotions are felt in the body, and they have these kind of signature ways that we feel them. There's variety, but in general, we're similar in the change triangle is universal, and we experience emotions more or less in a similar way. I have to be able to stay with the feeling in the body, to feel the core inherent biological impulse that the core emotion is pulling for. So if I want to not get stuck in some sort of...
Wait, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
What, can you say what that is? So
the core impulse?
Yes.
Yeah, so for sadness,
right.
It's often, I may want to curl up, I may want to share my sadness, I may need a hug, right? It's something that I need. For anger, it's... and anger is tricky for all of us, but the impulse of anger is aggressive. And so when I help people experience anger, there's a lot of de-shaming and de-guiltifying, asking those parts of us to kind of step back. But an impulse of anger may be to say something mean. Like I might have been angry at my kid before I've been working the change triangle for the last 20 years. And I might want to say, oh my God, you're so selfish. All the things I've done for you, why can't I visit my grandchild? So that's an impulse that I don't need to say. I can stay with the feeling of anger, which is usually a heat, and it's an energy coming up. And if you are with that, the energy, it turns into the impulse. What I want to say, what I want to do, right? If I was abused by an abusive parent and I'm with that anger from there, that is going to be a fierce anger, and I may want to hit and punch and kick. And we help people release those feelings and that energy in a variety of ways, none of which are a dress rehearsal for what you actually do in life, because experiencing a core emotion is a wholly internal experience. The last step, we bring our thinking brain online so we can think through, what should we do with this feeling? Do I need to tell someone, you know, when you said that, it really made me angry? Or is it something I want to manage on my own till the feeling goes away? And there's nothing like sleeping on something for, you know, we change states overnight. But that's another misconception, that I think people are so afraid of anger because they equate anger with destructive action.
Right.
So anger certainly wants to be destructive, but we can't control emotions, but we can and must control what the impulse of the emotion is once we have the emotion.
Right.
So, right, we can't stop the emotion from happening when we get triggered, but we can definitely work with the emotion.
Right. We have control, conscious control over the behavior.
Exactly.
Right. So I think what you're saying is core emotions are almost reflexive. They're like
The
almost
impulses.
the
Yes.
impulse.
Yes.
It's almost like out of your control.
It
Which,
may
I mean,
feel that way.
It feels.
Yes.
Right. It happens in a way that you are triggered by something.
Yes.
And the core emotion and the impulse happens out of your control.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's just part, it's like a program
Right.
that just
I guess that's why I
plays.
say
Yes.
reflex,
Yes.
almost like you don't know what's going to happen. It happens.
Yes.
And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
you're
right.
kind of
There's
right.
like a change in my state.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what's important? I mean, there's so many different theories of you know, thinking about how people label this and what you do with it. I'm just thinking different words that go with all the things you're saying, but the impulse, it's the pause, right? The therapy seems like it's done in the pause before it moves up to, before you decide what to do with it and be able to think about it, that you have to stop. When it happens, you don't act. You don't act until you're ready.
Right. Right.
And in the meantime, you're therapeutically trying to understand, do it for yourself, or, you know, what was that? What do I want to do with it? Will I say this to them? So how do you figure that part out?
Well, what's interesting is that once, I mean, and this is, now we're sort of talking about therapy.
Yeah,
so
sorry, I can't help
Yeah, I
myself.
know. Let me just go back to the pause. That
Okay,
as
pause.
a parent,
Go to the pause.
it's the pause that is probably the hardest part
Yes.
and everything. It's that, and that's the mindfulness practice with the change triangle in mind, is just to, and by the way, I had brought change triangle handouts for your bulletin board so that you can remind yourself, because how do we get in the habit of noticing that we are like about to do something, or that noticing that we've been triggered to anger, or noticing that we've been triggered into a defense, which in this type of therapy I do. Defenses are these, they're not bad things, like in psychoanalysis where we're like, where we feel judgy, like we judge people for their defenses. But defenses are brilliant, creative ways that we have all learned to spare ourselves emotional pain and discomfort. So that when you learn as a young kid to bury anger, because when you get angry, your mom gets angry, and that's scary, we squash it down with anxiety, and the combination of the core anger coming up and the anxiety coming down, which is muscular tension. You know how we get tense and back aches and stomach aches, and we hold our breath. That's another way we hold down emotions. That the combination of all that swirling around in the body, because it's all happening below the neck, is so uncomfortable that we automatically figure out how to spare ourselves so that we're not overwhelmed by conflict of, this is what I want, but I can't do that, and or overwhelmed by just the intensity on our nervous system, the arousal of the nervous system. So we do things like avoid what gets us upset, or we reach for a drink or a drug, or we work too much, or we eat too little, or we roll our eyes, or we slam a door. All those are various forms of defenses, and we all have them, and we need defenses. The goal in this is not to get rid of the defenses, it's becoming aware. So the awareness, this is an awareness tool that you can then take to the next level and use it. But really my mission in teaching the change triangle is really just to let people know there is stuff to know about emotions that is tremendously helpful, that takes away the shame of being human, that we have these feelings, that we need these feelings, and that there's ways to work with them that bring you in line with your goals and your alignment in yourself that feels good, and playing the long game for having the best life given our circumstances that we could have. And there's just no downside to learning about emotions.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. So that's an excellent question. So there are defenses that are very bad for us when we use them chronically. And there are defenses like at the end of a stressful day, I love a good game of solitaire on my cell phone, lying down on my sofa. So that's like a soft defense. What we want to do is take defenses that are automatic and chronic and we use rigidly and turn them into defenses that we can recognize, maybe think about. Well, alcohol sadly is no longer good for us and we want to lower the amount we drink. And can we work with the feelings so that we do not need the defenses as much? And of course, defenses get us into big trouble in relationships because they block intimacy and they block authentic self. What we're trying to do is be authentic and be kind and be compassionate and set boundaries. So there's like a lot to learn. But it all begins with understanding the change triangle so that at least we know how emotions work in the mind and body. But you're absolutely correct that defenses that cause us, that hurt others and hurt ourselves, we want to become aware of and ultimately relinquish. Yeah. But we won't relinquish defenses until we know that we can cope with a solid sense of self. So I can only stop people pleasing when I learn that I have the strength to set a boundary and tolerate another person's disappointment or anger or sadness, which we can absolutely all learn, and it is liberating. Yeah.
Well, how do you sell that? Like, how do you sell the idea to parents
Yes.
that they should learn how to feel their emotions? Because it sounds, well, I can't wait to, embark on this journey. I can imagine people would be like, no, thank you, because that's just too scary.
Right, so the idea with this book is to make it unscary. The reason that I could start working with my emotions is because I had an intellectual education in what it looked like to experience an emotion. Somebody, Diana Fosha, and the people at the AEDP Institute taught me that emotions are physical and that's why I feel this feeling and this feeling is normal and that I can deep breathe and regulate my nervous system and I can feel my feet on the ground. So there's like tons of, it's all like, here's how you learn how to do this, because we have to learn. And I think we should be learning this in high school bio and high school health class, so that at least kids know that there is stuff to learn about emotions and that there's a practice that can help them. And parents want to learn about emotions because they're suffering. Their kids are suffering, they're suffering, and anything that helps. But you're right, there are some people that won't be ready. And that's why I always say you don't have to feel your feelings, but at least learn the change triangle so that you have the intellectual, the knowledge of that there is this map, and you can learn it when you're ready. Everybody is ready at their own time. My mother told me so many times, "You need therapy, Hilary. You need therapy, Hilary." And I was like, "No, I don't need therapy. You need therapy." But ultimately, I did need therapy, and then luckily I went into training where it was mandated.
It's one sure way to get you there.
Yeah, and I only wish that I had learned the change triangle when I was a young mother.
Yeah,
That's I had to wait for.
Well, I was going to ask you that. What do you wish you knew as a young parent?
I wish I learned the change triangle.
So put that in words.
Yes.
If you don't have the time like in the elevator, if you say to somebody,
Yeah, I wish I knew. One, that there was that there were things to learn about emotions that could help me feel better, and the change triangle is teaches people how to work with emotions in the mind and body so that they feel better and more themselves, more their authentic self. And it helps you understand other people. When other people behave badly, you don't have to get into a power struggle. Or let's just take a teenager who says you suck or slams the door, right? And then parents get nuts. Don't do that. And they pick a fight, and it doesn't lead anywhere good.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe saying, understanding that this kid is having an emotion and then being in their defenses, and I can let it go. Or if they're being rude, I could say, you know what, I don't really like you to talk to me that way, but are you okay? Obviously, something is bothering you. And again, it might not always work, but it's certainly good to have options and alternatives. Yeah.
Well, so for those of us who have older kids, as we both do, and maybe people in the audience, is it ever too late for those of us who didn't know this when we were bringing our kids up?
No, and that's the other hopeful message, is that what we're doing with emotions and relationships are two things that lead to rapid brain change, which is the buzz, neuroplasticity, which you may have heard of. So neuroplasticity is basically how you rewire the brain. It's new learning. And so it's never too late. I screwed up everything in my life. I picked the wrong career. I married a guy that I divorced when I had young children and screwed them up, and floundered and all sorts of things. And then I got depressed, and then I learned all this, and it really changed everything. That's why I'm like, my pet peeve that I didn't get any emotions education evolved into a moral outrage. And despite the fact that I can't stand social media, I'm like, I'm trying to educate and get the word out. I feel like Paul Revere or the town crier. It's like, this is important.
Yeah.
But emotions education is a tough sell.
Well,
Yeah.
God, it shouldn't be. That's how I feel about,
Yeah.
postpartum depression
Yeah,
and the
right.
things that we need to be teaching
Right.
at a very young age, that motherhood is not bliss, and
Right.
that the myth that we're being sold,
Right, it's
is
myths.
not accurate.
Right.
But it's sort of the same. We're
very similar.
on
I
these
think that's
missions,
why, right,
right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, you should be, peddling your wares in elementary school, and are there core curriculums that teach core where is Emotions 101 in the schools?
Well, and I teach emotions at 101,
Right.
and I have a class, but that's another pet peeve. I don't think people want to teach their kid the change triangle. No. You model,
Right.
you model it, and you help them stay. The goal is to raise as regulated children as possible.
But to even know that an emotion is physical
Yes.
is mind blowing.
Yeah, but they know it because they feel it.
They feel it, but if you can't put words to it, it's hard.
I don't
maybe
know,
not.
because I
Maybe
think if you're not getting in the way and you're modeling, so your child cries, and really you don't have to do anything. You don't, in the moment that your child is upset, you just want to make space for the feeling. You don't want to lean in and be intrusive, and you don't want to be abandoning or neglectful because their sadness upsets you. You want to, again, if it's tough, you feel your feet on the floor, and then you start breathing and working your own change triangle as you are with that child, letting them ride the full wave of an emotion. And, maybe say, it's okay, I'm here, I'm not going to go away. Very, very simple things. The problem is we get in the way of emotions.
Yeah.
And then those are sort of obstacles that people come into therapy for, to learn how to get out of the way of their own emotions when they feel it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 So you don't have to. Kids we feel our emotions in the body.
Right.
When someone told me emotions were physical, I was like, of course they were.
Right.
But as a grown up, I needed someone to say that,
Right.
because when I talked about emotions, my father would say, that's like New Age BS in California. We're intellectual. We have command over our emotions. Yeah.
May I say that you said your father? How do you engage men and fathers?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because, again, you know how we say, women tend to, and mothers who are process oriented, and the fathers are transporting. They can get. So
Exactly.
Can you
And
can you repeat the question
Yes.
as well? So we're going to start the Q&A in just a couple
Okay.
minutes, and we're going to come around with mics because we want to capture everybody's questions. So go for it.
Fantastic. The question is, how do you work with fathers and men who, again, need it so much? Because men, I just adore men. I have such a soft spot because they are socialized completely out of their tender emotions. Like, it's not manly to feel sadness, and it's not manly to feel fear. And yes, it is, because all humans, men, women, and every gender in between, have the exact same core emotions. So again, it's by educating that this is the science, this is a fact, and to help create compassion for themselves, that every man knows that they're socialized out of those feelings, because whether their father said to them, stop crying, or you hear man up, all these things, they know it. And then they have to relearn how to feel. But in the book, what I love about this is we really thought about fathers. There aren't really a lot of parenting books that address fathers. And so many of the men in my practice, actually they're coming now because they know I'm writing for parents. They are very upset because they get mad at their little children, and they want to stop getting mad. They get mad because they're playing too loud after they're stressed out a day, or they're getting potato chips on the couch or something where, and then what they need, they need the education in emotions so that they know it's valid that they're feeling. And then you teach them, like, what's happening in that moment where you are getting, basically, it's like anger can be a core emotion, but it can also be, all core emotions can be used defensively. So men often, when they have needs for soothing and connection and intimacy, and they're fearful or they're sad, will defend against it with aggression. And a lot of bullying has to do with feeling badly about oneself. We sort of know that, but shame is a really important emotion that I write about a lot. And it's not just, oh, I feel ashamed about something. There's so much to learn about the affect, right? An affect is like a physiological experience in the body. When we are moving towards something with excitement or energy and exhilaration, and it's like we hit a wall, somebody gives us a scowl and says, stop playing, or what are you so happy about, or why do you feel so good about yourself? And we automatically, for protection, recede into like a turtle shell. It's the most damaging emotion because it feels like it's annihilation anxiety. It's exquisitely painful, both psychologically and physical, and we need defenses to stop that downward spiral. But the hopefulness is you can unlearn all these things. It's not always easy, and it's not always quick, although sometimes it is. And again, feel the core feelings from whatever wounds and traumas we had, or whatever's happening in the moment, and then come back into a more regulated state where we can withstand our family, who may not change and still humiliate us or make us feel bad, and be able to set boundaries, or be able to just, know inside that it's not us, it's them, and they had bad childhoods, and these are the sequelae.
Yeah, I think that speaks to right? Parents want to do right by their kids inherently, right? So I think that given things to learn to manage their feelings, those core feelings is just, I think that's going to appeal.
Yeah. And what's really important to make the distinction is that by making space for our child's feelings, it's not permissiveness about the behavior.
Right.
We have to separate the experience of the feeling, because we need to teach our kids proper behavior so that they survive in the world.
Right.
And when they treat us badly, we need to be able to say, that's not okay.
Right.
It's okay that you're angry, but it's not okay that you're doing this.
Right. Well, I would say feelings and actions are not the same thing.
Right.
You can feel however you want to feel, but how you act has to be appropriate. Right. I mean,
there you go. You do know that.
Well, I know from a different lens.
Yes. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I have one last question, although I have many. But
no, I think we're
Oh,
yeah,
we
go
have to
for it.
do-
And then we'll
I
go
was
to
just
open
gonna
a
say-
Q&A.
Okay. As an expert in the area,
Yes.
you know, and maybe you already told us this because you started with that example with
Yeah.
your daughter, but what still gets you? Where do you still fall down on the
Yeah.
change triangle?
The same type of things. These you know, we take a long time wiring with our habits and ways of being. So just the fact that with the example with my daughter not wanting to see me, or when I just say stupid things without thinking. Yeah, which I won't go into.
Yeah.
I'm realizing I'm being taped, and I don't want my kids to see certain things that I've said. But the same type of things. It's just I don't act on them
Yes.
anymore.
Right.
So that these parts, the volume goes down on the parts that we're trying to turn the volume down on, and then we're bolstering this other part, and it's just nice. It just continues to spiral in the right way,
I
not
like
in the
that.
wrong way. Yeah.
I love that.
Mm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to go to questions.
Yeah, I think we had one over
Okay.
here. Do you still have a question?
Thank you for
I thought-
coming, first
yeah,
of all.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I have a daughter who's 3, turning 4, and a son who is 1, turning 2, both in November, and a baby due in March.
Mm.
Oh,
So thank you.
Wow.
I am very excited. I think this is a great perspective. I follow a lot of accounts on restorative parenting, big feelings, things like that. I think it's very important. I really liked your point about grounding your feet and taking a moment to regulate for yourself. I admit I just actually was very frustrated at my daughter leaving out the door just tonight. She was just really crying and screaming, and I just got in her face. And I was like, Marilyn, like, you need to go sit down and stop crying.
Mhm.
And I know I actually work against that quite often. But there's just like sometimes I just let it slip.
Right.
But I am trying to find a balance between my parenting style and my husband's parenting style, who comes from Central Africa. So a lot of dynamics in that. To set a boundary in feeling feelings, but also at the stage of where my daughter is, to teach her how to like quiet and, you know, try to kind of keep herself regulated. So I would love for you to expand on the you know, the modeling and the regulation piece on a parent's part. And I feel like it's a lot to balance in the moment, because it's not only my children, but also my husband at the same time. And so I'm trying to kind of navigate those puzzle pieces. And if you have any insights on that regulation of like helping a child feel the feelings, but also balancing out the regulation of both parents, and how to kind of put a line down for your daughter or to your children, so that they need to learn how to navigate the feelings. You can't just cry for 25 minutes. So I'm very curious in that. And just, it could be developmental otherwise. If you have any insights there, it'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I guess I was curious, like, when your daughter was crying, for example, when you were leaving, do you know what that brought up in you? Like, why did you need her to stop crying?
I was very frustrated. I was like, listen, like, she was crying because her brother was crying. He was
Yeah.
crying because he didn't want the babysitter to be there.
Yeah.
And it was very rough transition between coming in the door and seeing the babysitter right away. And
Yeah.
so it was all of that at the same time.
Mhm.
And I was actually frustrated with the babysitter, because I needed her to take more, you know, more of a step towards my children, to be like, it's going to be okay. I would have done that myself. But I needed to get out of the house. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's the frustrating piece is really understanding, like, I'm frustrated with an adult here, and I'm making an expectation and assumption for them to, like, please take over. But I'm in charge, and I need to, like, pass it off.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was. And then my toddler got.
Yeah, it's contagious.
Yeah.
Emotions
Yes,
are
it
contagious.
is,
One
it
cries
is.
and then the next
Yes.
cry.
So
yeah, and it's so hard, right?
Yeah,
It's
so-
so hard. Yeah, so I mean, I guess if it was me, I would just be curious about my frustration a little bit, and in the book, I say, if you can get to we call the change triangle and those 4 C's the guiding lights. So if you could get to a place of curiosity and compassion for yourself and stay connected to yourself and the kid and feel your feet on the floor, you know, it would be like, what would happen if you just said, I love you guys, I'll see you soon, bye. And you just spared yourself the stuff in the middle. Like that's where I would go with it. Yeah. I hope that's helpful. It's like some of these things are just simple, but it's so hard in the moment. So I don't want to because I would get mad too at times when the kids were upset because it made me feel guilty. And that's really where the frustration came from. And that's like a real thing. But it's the guilt, I think, that we have to, I talk a lot about guilt in the book because I think that's what pisses us off is when it's like we're mad at you because you're doing something that's making me feel bad about leaving. Right. And if you could just cut yourself some slack and say, it's okay if I leave, that's not traumatic. They'll stop crying when you go probably. So, and why is it not okay if your kid cries for 20 minutes? It's like if you're standing right there and you're saying, yeah, I get it. Except if you have stuff to do, then you might want to pass them off, or if you know that you're irritable. So, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, thanks.
I have another one right here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Mine is a different story. I raised 2 third culture kids. They're now young adults. So my son went to 7 schools, my daughter to 5. And now we're assigned here in New York. And then before coming in, they said, okay, guys, we're not going with you. See you then. But recently, my daughter would call and say, she's into medical school and she's taking up a major exam this coming Sunday. And she goes, Mommy, I miss you. Wish I were there or you were here. So it's painful.
Yes, it is. Right there it is, right there. Yes.
I wish I could fly home.
Yes.
So sometimes I don't know what to say. I just listen to her and she cries. And I try not to cry, but I couldn't help it.
Right.
Well,
that's fine.
So
yeah, I think that's exactly.
I remember when there was a line that in the talk earlier, it's something like we didn't acknowledge sadness. It has been like that. And then I realized that the constant rooting and the pruting, like we pack, we unpack, we go to one country, learn a new culture, and then it kind of had a strain in them. And it's only now that they're young adults that I realized that they decided, okay, we're not going. We're not going with, but it's New York. You're not going? No, we're visiting. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's very, very hard. Thanks for sharing that. I think you did a good job just like letting yourself feel, letting her feel. Yeah.
And you didn't say, don't be silly.
Yes, exactly.
Just move on. Like, you're going to be okay. You got to get it together so you can take that test. You did well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love you, right? And I'm here, and I wish I was there. All those things that are just loving. But it sounds like you're very loving, and it is hard. The moving, yeah.
I think we can do one more. Yeah, and then if you have any closing thoughts or a closing question,
I guess the opposite end. What are some recommendations for children as adult parents that still struggle with emotions? Is that the change triangle, or also is it this book that's like they as adults are still adults, but we are also still children, or navigating all of that when it's been going on for 60, 70 years?
You mean you're talking
Like
about
our parents,
your
my
parents are
parents.
behaving badly?
Well, just still struggling with emotions,
Yes.
right? Still struggling to name and own emotions. And then as an adult or someone who's working through emotions, it's complex when we then have all of these language for emotions.
Yes.
Trying to navigate parents, like adult parents, to try to talk about how we feel.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have given them the book of the change triangle. That was
you gave them It's Not Always Depression?
Still, exactly. Yes.
I wonder if did you ask them if they could stomach reading it?
That's a good question. I
Yeah,
haven't really followed up.
And maybe you could say, I was wondering if we could like read the book together, like I don't know if they'll talk about it with you. Maybe we could read a chapter at a time and then just talk about it, and as a bonding and creating a bridge. But right, the other idea of the change triangle is that the whole family has a language to talk about emotions, so that you can talk about, oh, it sounds like you're a bit defensive. I'm wondering what's going on for you. I'm here and I'm happy to listen. Yeah. No, parents are a big problem.
Well, and I just want to add to that, you can't change anyone else. So it's you who has to decide, can work the change triangle or can do whatever you need to do to figure out how you want to react to their behavior, because they may never change. Like, you can buy them the book, but did they read it?
Mm-hmm.
And are they interested in learning?
Right.
Or are they, is that lip service? But ultimately, how you act changes the outcome of the relationship, because you can change how you behave by not responding in the same way, by not reacting, but instead being, pausing, being thoughtful. That changes things, even if they never change.
100%.
Any final question from you? Any closing thoughts?
I would ask you, Hilary, what are like the 3 take homes? You and I sort of talked about this. I was like, I need 3 things to go home with. Like, what, and all this interesting conversation, and I'll have the book, but what do you want us to go home with?
Yeah, I have my 3 things. In fact, I often say, if you take one thing away today, it's just take away that emotions just are. They're not under conscious control, so it makes no sense to judge your own emotions. But it does make a lot of sense to be compassionate and to work with them. The other thing I would say is to know that you can't think your way through an emotion, that you have to work with them in the body, and that there's things you can learn and practice that that over time you will get better at that. And the third thing is that there is always hope for healing, that the brain can always change and does change, that relationships, good relationships, are healing, and emotions and being with emotions is healing. And that's my 3 things.
Love that. Oh, well, congratulations again.
Thank you so
This
much.
is, I think it's kind of groundbreaking, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a different way to look at things, and I think it's going to be so helpful to parents. And I know that we are going to have a stack of them at the Motherhood Center, because I think it's of the books, because we are going to help parents figure out how to parent their young children in a way that allows them to manage their own emotions, understand and manage.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled.
Yeah.
And I brought change triangles for people who want to take them home and post them on the bulletin board and just think about what they want to do with it.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming on a muggy, rainy night.